So welcome everybody. This seems really formal, and that is not the intent for today. And for those of you who know me, so we are going to have time for all of us to be interactive and see each other on screen and get your questions answered. But we're going to give a little context at the start. So I'm Shelley Strickland. I think I know most of you on the call. I'm the Vice President for Philanthropy here at the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. And I want to thank you all for joining on this rainy day, at least here in Ann Arbor. We held a lunch and learn on the topic of investing back in February 2020 before the world collapsed, and had a full room of people who were interested in impact investing and said, we want to learn more. And we've only done more work since then, including a pilot event we held April 30th of this year, where we again heard from many advisors that attended or said, I can't attend, I want to learn more. And so we're holding this today. And I think I picked a day when half the world's on vacation, but I'm actually really glad we're going to have a smaller group, because I really want this to be fun and interactive. And the fact that we can see each other on maybe one screen and not three would be really lovely. So before we begin the program, I just want to give a couple important foundation updates. So as of May, one of you, a professional advisor, Betsy Petoskey, is now our board chair. We're really excited about that. She's an estate planning attorney with Conlon, McKinney, and Philbrick. We're going to be sharing more about finishing up a 5-year strategic framework and planning for the next 5 years under Betsy's leadership. And so we hope that we are in person next May for our annual community meeting at WCC, and where we can gather together and still have a virtual streaming option as well, since we're not sure how this is all going to come together. But before we share that news, including a September virtual meeting for the community, there's one update in particular that I think will be interesting for you as advisors, and I hope continue to give you confidence in referring your clients to us. When I started at the foundation and when we began our strategic framework 5 years ago, our assets were at 75 million. We're now at 200 million. And of course, you all know we've had a wonderful run, but about half of that is actually gifts in. And so we're just really excited about that. What you're going to learn today is that growth, the reason I'm telling you that is because it means that not only is more going to go out in this community in terms of grants and scholarships, because we're now investing a portion of our assets, that means your clients in working with us are actually making an even bigger impact in the community through their giving. So Neel Hajra, our CEO and a licensed attorney, is going to give you context to what we mean by impact investing and our approach to that locally, with the goal of others joining in. Then we're going to show 3 brief videos from the salon by our 3 investees. Michigan Women Forward, invest in women-owned businesses. The Fair Food Fund fights food deserts. And IFF accelerates economic opportunity through mission lending. So please be thinking of your questions. Enter in the chat room. Again, we're going to have a chance to actually dialogue together in whatever way you want that to happen. And then we'll open up for a discussion with Neel and our CFO, Jamie Hunter. So since Jamie hasn't joined in our advisor lunch and learns in the past, I just want to say a few words about him as intro. So Jamie spent many years on Wall Street as an investment banker for JP Morgan and Company. He has an MBA from the University of Michigan. He has from the University of Virginia. Wahoo, sorry, Jamie. He has experience in financial planning with Raymond James, and he understands the nonprofit sector because he's applied his financial acumen serving as an executive director of the Saline Fiddlers Philharmonic and president of the Saline Area Soccer Association. So Jamie, Neel, and I are in the office today. We remain operating virtually through the summer, but we can meet with you by appointment here, or even better, come to you or meet for coffee. I did that a couple times this week with people outside, and it was just fabulous. So our colleague Jillian Rosen, who is the Vice President for Community Investment, She leads our grant making as well as our impact investing work in consultation with Jamie as our CFO. And she's joining us also today from a summer trip to New York. So without further ado, Neel's going to provide some quick context for our impact investing work and what we want to accomplish with collaboration with partners for our community. Neel?
Thanks, Shelly. Hey, everybody. I am going to be brief to make space for the videos, and then hopefully we'll leave a lot of space for just conversation, Q&A, answer questions, pose new ones, and I'm excited for Jamie to be a part of this conversation too. So several years ago, the foundation started exploring what impact investing could mean to Washtenaw County's dedicated endowment, which is us, and how we could put more of our capital to work in new ways to make more impact. I encourage you all to visit our website where we talk in more detail and granularity about what we mean by impact investing, but I actually wanted to read you the definition that we subscribe to because there's a lot of ways of expressing it. Impact investing refers to the practice of investing in community projects that are intended to generate a financial return as well as a tangible social or community benefit. Unlike grants, investments are intended to be repaid to the community foundation and can be recycled back into the community through additional investments. So when we started exploring this issue, we started with a few experiments. We issued several loans to the Ann Arbor Art Center, where Marie Clough, a very business savvy executive director, was able to take those loans, leverage them for the Art Center's benefit, and pay them back. And we kept exploring how we should move forward. And that's where we commissioned a significant body of research that mapped out how capital flows in Washtenaw County. That was a really important step for us because the research showed that an estimated $2 billion flow in investment capital flows through Washtenaw County at any given time. And more importantly, our research identified 5 key sectors where there were over $600 million in new investable opportunities in the coming several years. Put differently, there are opportunities to put our capital to work locally, and that's what the Community Foundation has set out to do, using the research as a roadmap. A group of our trustees, 5 of them to be particular, formed a committee, and that includes Fernando Ortiz, the chair of our investment finance committee, who's also on this call. They're leading this work along with the board and then in partnership with Jillian, with Jamie, and with Shelly. It's a truly integrated board and staff effort. So to date, we've allocated 1% of our endowment portfolio to local investments that generate social and financial return. That equates to about $2 million deployed right now. Literally just last night, the board approved raising that ceiling to 5%, or with current assets, approximately 10 million. Now, we're not going to get to 10 million tomorrow. As you can imagine, deal sourcing is very time consuming right now. And that's part of what we're going to talk about in the Q&A. But we're very excited that we are increasing our commitment because our first investments have gone so well. And that's why we want to play you those videos. The goal of the foundation is to do the heavy lift. We want to bring new platforms into Washtenaw County that make it easier for other institutions to invest in impact investing for financial and social returns. We know right now there are no easy avenues or answers. And so we're excited to bring regional and national efforts to Washtenaw County with our capital. We'll plow the heavy snow, and in hopes of attracting your clients, institutions with capital to invest, so that we can all team up together, because our capital alone will not move the needle on a more equitable flow of investment capital in Washtenaw County. We're also going to hear from the 3 institutions that Shelly mentioned: Michigan Women Forward, Fair Food Network, and IFF. I wanted to point out before the videos play that IFF is a CDFI, otherwise known as a Community Development Financial Institution. These are U.S. Treasury certified organizations that provide financing in various forms to low-income communities. They do retail banking, they do investing, they come in all sorts of flavors. And what we're trying to do is bring more CDFIs to the area. But I want to be clear, we want to work with current local banks in the area. We want to work with other institutions. We want to work with individual investors as well. Only when we team up will we actually generate enough new capital flow to really turn this into something that improves lives in Washtenaw County. So we're looking forward to a conversation about all of this after we roll the videos. So for now, we're going to actually play you 3 consecutive videos. from our investor salon, so you can get a flavor for the platforms we're introducing to Washtenaw County. So I will see you in just a few minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lolita Nunn. I'm the Investor Relations Officer for Fair Food Fund, the impact investing arm of Fair Food Network. I'm here with my colleague, Mark Watson, who's the Senior Investment Strategist. And thank you all for taking time to learn more about the work that we're doing. Fair Food Network started 11 years ago with our signature program, Double Up Food Bucks. This program is geared towards supporting anyone that has SNAP, also known as food stamps, by providing additional fruits and vegetables into their homes. Double Up Food Bucks provides dollar for dollar match. So if someone goes into a participating location and buys $20 worth of fruits and vegetables, that money is matched, helping to drive access of healthy foods into homes that need it the most. That program started at Eastern Market in Detroit and has grown to over 800 locations in 27 states. To grow that opportunity of creating additional health and to also grow wealth in our communities, Fair Food Fund, the impact investing arm, started 7 years ago, started in New England, supporting the viability of farmers, and has since evolved and been reimagined to support enterprises along the entire food chain, not only farmers, grocery stores, restaurants, distributors. We really want to reimagine how capital is used to support our community. The work that we're doing really is geared towards addressing the problem of health and wealth gaps in our communities, which has only been increased due to the pandemic. We have intentionality of supporting our BIPOC and women-led organizations. With the opportunity, we see that food is the one thing that connects us all. It is essential in every community. It is essential for a thriving community. Fair Food Fund, as I mentioned, started 7 years ago, and within the last 2 years has been reimagined to support entrepreneurs in our communities with that lens of equity. We want to provide a holistic approach, so not only flexible catalytic capital with great terms, but also wraparound technical assistance, providing enterprises with pre and post TA. Our approach is to enter into a community as a place-based model to work alongside the folks who are doing the great work in the community, bringing this flexible capital, not only raising capital local in Michigan, in Washtenaw County, also tapping into the national resources and being able to bring those funds to support the needs of the local community. We will deal source with intentionality of an equity lens. Our goal is that 50%, at least 50% of our investments will go to support BIPOC and women-led organizations. That business assistance that we see is ever so critical, and deal making with local investors. IFF and Michigan Women Forward, two other great partners that are in this investor salon, being able to work with them, work with banks, work with CDFIs, so that we bring the best opportunities to the enterprises. Along with the support that we've received from Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, we are able to bring this work to Washtenaw County. I will touch on that our goal is impact first. We do offer, and I'll get into this in just a few minutes, the social impact notes have a small return, but our goal is impact first. Our goal is to support BIPOC and women-led organizations. We do this through a holistic approach. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have ability to bring SNAP when we're working with grocery stores, farmers markets, ensuring that communities receive double the amount of fresh food, driving access. Local strength, there's synergy that's created when you're working alongside the folks who are doing great work already, being able to be additive to the system. And this is a model change that we're happy to bring to Washtenaw County. As I mentioned, the catalytic flexible capital that we bring alongside wraparound technical assistance, meeting these enterprises where they are, getting them to the point of financing, providing financing, and then also follow-on technical assistance that may be needed. It's a gap that's always missed. We see that folks get technical assistance, maybe financing, but then there's that follow-on piece that's ever so critical as well. An example of this work is Cooking with Q. Q came to our Brand Accelerator training and event, I'll say, back in 2019, pre the Cooking with Q restaurant. And we stayed in touch with her. Q opened up her great restaurant in Detroit on Woodward, and then the pandemic hit. She went from $20,000 a month to $5,000 a month in revenue because of the pandemic. We were able to come in, provide Q with one-on-one consulting. Mark Watson, who's on this call, worked alongside Q, helping her to tap into her social network. We were able to help her pivot, increase her home delivery service, land a contract with the city of Detroit, and also provide her with funding, helping her to survive and now thrive through the pandemic. Q is generating anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a month annually in revenue. We're able to do this work through a combination of grants and social impact notes. Our two offerings, the 5-year at 1.5% and a 10-year at 2%. The grants go to support that technical assistance, the one-on-one coaching, and then the social impact notes are where we're able to redeploy to support these food enterprises. Our work is focused in New England. We're in Michigan. We're in the cusp of going into Camden. And right now in Washtenaw County specifically, we have 2 pipeline deals that we are working on to support enterprises here locally in our community. This is going to end the presentation. We'll have a few moments for questions and answers. I just want to leave you with the work that we're doing is really providing healthy food access. The work that we're doing is driving economic viability, sparking job creation, and creating wealth in our communities.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to virtually meet you. My name is Yi Wei, and I serve as the Vice President of Impact Capital at IFF. And Chris?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Ewell. I lead IFF's work in Michigan and Ohio. I'm based in the Detroit market. My journey to IFF has kind of been a winding one, but I started off, I was a commercial banker for about a decade, then pivoted and did impact investing work at the Skillman Foundation in Detroit. Went and worked at Quicken Loans for a while, leading up their community investment work, but then pivoted to IFF about 4 years ago, frankly, because I view IFF as one of the most dynamic community change platforms in the country. And as a matter of fact, when I was at Skillman, helped invest in starting IFF's office in Detroit. So very excited about the work we do. And I hope as Yi and I get through this presentation, you guys get excited as well.
Great, thanks, Chris. So first, a little bit of background around IFF. IFF was actually birthed out of a community foundation in Chicago, the Chicago Community Trust in 1988. The program manager, Trinetta Logue, was asked to figure out how she could finance capital expenditures for nonprofits. And at that time, and still often today, philanthropy is not really well set up to do financing for nonprofits. So she went to the banks. And she tells the story of how she was laughed out of the rooms at banks when she raised that she wanted to finance nonprofits serving low-income communities. And that led to the birth of the Illinois Facilities Fund, which was later shortened to IFF once IFF became an organization that served the entire Midwest. And IFF's theory of change is really that responsible debt financing can lead to significant and sustained growth for nonprofits. And it will enable them to increase their financial sustainability by building net assets, their financial flexibility by leveraging their net assets, and ultimately they gain more control over their space and their programming. A lot of the nonprofits we serve have very space-specific needs, for example, early childhood education centers, health clinics, grocery stores, And it's not just a blank box that they need to operate in. So if they have high quality facilities, they can achieve better programming outcomes. So IFF is really here to be a gap filler between the commercial bank sector and philanthropy. And ultimately, we believe that flexible, patient, long-term capital will be in their interest. We are a CDFI, a community development financial institution. So as many of you may know, we are a lender, but IFF is not just a lender. We also have a robust 25-person real estate consulting team to help nonprofit leaders figure out what they need with respect to their real estate. On the other side of the shop, the Social Impact Accelerator, there are a lot of wraparound services. And it's really a recognition that capital alone is not sufficient. IFF has a pretty broad and growing footprint. We lend across 10 states in the Midwest. Our largest three sectors are affordable housing, education, and healthcare, but we will lend into any nonprofit sector that serves low income and special needs communities. Last year, we hit the $1 billion threshold in terms of the amount of capital we have deployed, and our balance sheet stands around $500 million. Chris, do you want to talk about why IFF Capital is unique?
Yeah, so there's several things that make us unique. First and foremost, even though we do lend on real estate and fixed assets, we are a non-appraisal based lender. We feel that appraisals do kind of perpetuate systemic bias. They kind of become a de facto redlining tool because they prevent capital from going to the nonprofits in the neighborhoods and in the cities where they're needed most. And so we remove that, but we're still lenders and we're still smart lenders. So we look at other things. We look at their revenues, make sure we understand their cash flow dynamics, and as you mentioned, make sure we put responsible debt onto their balance sheets to help them grow. You can kind of see that as we look, our investment record over the last 32 years has been pretty stellar, and as seen on there, we maintain very high ARIS ratings, one of 5 CDFIs in the country to kind of have that highest rating across all things that they measure. And I think the reason for that, there's a couple reasons for it. One, we do take quite a bit of risk in what we do, but I think we're smart about that risk. We have deeply embedded teams in the communities where we lend. We have partners like Ann Arbor Community Foundation and others, so that we try to get to know those markets. But also, if our customers hit some hiccups, we have a patient workout mindset and a solutions orientation. I think, again, that's played out over time. It's very important. Another thing that makes us unique are a few other things. We can lend as little as $10,000 and up to $7 million. So we can kind of go up and down the spectrum, do small things, and we'll get involved in some fairly large projects, 10, 15, $20 million projects, where we can come in as either a senior debt role, subordinated debt, or oftentimes we do bridge loans, against capital campaigns or government grants or other things. So lots of ways we can be flexible there. And then, as he had mentioned as well, we lend across a very wide array of nonprofits and a handful of for-profit businesses, including in the affordable housing space and early ed space. So again, pretty unique capital out there. Go ahead, Yi.
Thanks, Chris. And I just want to emphasize one of the points Chris made. So a lot of people are shocked to know that we are a commercial real estate lender that does not require appraisals. And we are pretty proud of the fact that we feel like we've stumbled upon a secret sauce. So despite this untraditional underwriting approach, we've maintained a really stellar financial standing. So ARIS is the S&P of CDFIs, and we have consistently maintained the highest rating for financial strength and impact over the last decade. And you can see here that we've consistently grown and our portfolio asset quality remains strong.
Yeah, and to date in Michigan, you can see we've closed as of 2020, just over $90 million of loans. We've been here for just over 7 years, but we've been on kind of a growth trajectory. I consistently say our region is the growth engine for IFF. Our Detroit office is the second largest in our footprint. We're opening a Grand Rapids office this year. And this past year alone, we approved over $43 million in loans. So we've been on kind of a vertical growth curve on the lending side, but also adding to our real estate consulting team, our real estate development team, and building out a pretty robust platform covering the state. To date, you can see on there, we've done 4 loans totaling just south of $2 million in Washtenaw County. I would say, you know, we've had kind of more of a reactive stance to Washtenaw County, and what we're excited about with this investment from Ann Arbor Community Foundation and some of the partnerships that we're developing, we're excited to be much more proactive in thinking about how to get more capital on the street in Washtenaw County. The way we do that, you know, kind of multifaceted. First and foremost, I spend a lot of time, I'll be spending a lot of time in Washtenaw County working with Jillian and the team to really understand who the players are, frankly, who kind of centers of influence are across the community. I start spending a lot of time with them, start understanding the problems and some of the solutions, and where IFF can play a unique role, and then I'll start plugging in our lenders, our real estate development team, our real estate consulting team, whatever makes sense there. And I'm really excited about working with you know, the other CDFIs that Ann Arbor Community Foundation is investing in, and also pulling in some of our other CDFI partners as necessary. I think it's really important to create a community development ecosystem in place, and I think collectively that's what we need to work on in the coming years, is to truly build out a more robust ecosystem in Washtenaw County, and will drive success. One of the ways we've been trying to drive that success in Michigan is we created what we call the Impact Connection, which is a vehicle for community foundations and any accredited investor around the state to invest in IFF and help us deploy capital. The power of this is we've tried to, one, kind of create a community of practice so that these investors, we've started hosting meetings where they can talk with each other, understand what's going on the ground. We've also kind of simplified the reporting processes and things like that. But the most powerful part of it, you know, I view this as a vehicle both to attract investments, but a more powerful vehicle, frankly, to deploy capital in places where we don't, you know, don't always look. And so what happens with this is our investors become kind of force multipliers for IFF, rather than us having lenders, you know, all across the state, which is just not possible. We now have partners in each of the communities, like in Ann Arbor, where people are investing in us, and then kind of we have a joint mission for success and trying to not just deploy the capital invested into IFF from Ann Arbor Community Foundation, but to leverage that capital in multiples. The way IFF's balance sheet works is we're able to do that. We're able to leverage multiple sources of capital and can deploy as much, you know, as many deals as we find in Washtenaw County that meet our criteria. Would be able to deploy that capital. Just really quickly through here, you can see some of the loans closed in 2019, and then we'll have 2020 as the next page again. And I know folks will get this presentation, so you'll be able to take a more in-depth look. And then you can see some of the results there, and then I'll flip to Yi on the investment terms.
Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, one of the benefits that investors really appreciate is that just because you invest a certain amount doesn't mean the capital we deploy in your territory will be limited. So if you invest $50,000, we will lend to the organizations that need it with no limit. And here are our latest terms, and we're excited to be partnering with Ann Arbor and excited to cultivate this ecosystem in Washtenaw. Thank you for your time.
Okay, hi, I'm Carolyn Casson. Let me just quickly kind of, for those of you who aren't familiar with Michigan Women Forward, Michigan Women Forward is a 35-year-old statewide nonprofit that started life off as a foundation, but without an endowment, I don't think really succeeded as a foundation. And so about 6 years ago, we decided to shift gears away from giving money that we had to raise every year, which was a difficult proposition, to impact investing. And we decided to do that through micro lending and providing access to capital to women in the state of Michigan. That was a very, very appealing to our board, and also has proven to be a very effective way of helping women. And I'll tell you kind of how we try to do that. We also do some other things. For those of you who know us, we have a well-known leadership program for young women who can replace all of us someday soon, and because they're so smart and so capable, and that we've given them that support. We also invest in the celebration of women. So you know, you can check out those kind of things with what we do and through our exhibit hall. So the investment by the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation was really into our micro lending fund. They made an investment so that we would have loan dollars that we would be able to deploy here in Washtenaw County, and especially in areas that weren't getting a lot of micro lending support, such as Ypsilanti and rural parts of the county. So there's a slide up there about some of the people that we've invested in. These are the kind of women we target: low to moderate income women, especially minority owned businesses who cannot get access to capital through traditional methods. Our focus is that we are trying to create, and our ultimate goal is to create a diverse economy, an inclusive economy. We do that by increasing the number of women and women of color receiving capital to start businesses. We count that, you know, every day, every week, every month, every year. Our goal, though, is to not just lend money; it's to create successful businesses for those women, and make sure that through the creation of this business, they have increased economic stability and personal wealth grows and changes the current situation. So we also are trying to create a more stable and viable Michigan Women Forward by lending money out, getting it back, and we can then reuse it over and over and over again. It increases our balance sheet, and it becomes an opportunity for others to engage in this process. We do that, and most importantly, we're going to repay your money in the time frame that you choose. The investment vehicle that we've put in place is really an effective one. It's in our exhibit hall, it's in our booth, and we can send it to you by email. The investment prospectus is registered with the state of Michigan. It allows donors and investors to choose the impact they want, to choose a particular geography, and what measures you would like us to achieve and by when. So it's a very effective tool, and allows you to get very granular in your impact investing. You can purchase notes for 5, 7, or 10 years. They are unsecured notes, but with the generosity of both the Fisher Foundation and the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation, who have given us $1 million together for our first $5 million worth of investments as loss reserve. So we have, they may not be secured, but they are backed by the foundations in the state. So I'm going to turn it over to the person who actually does the work, who actually finds these entrepreneurs, works with them, makes them successful, and that's Jennifer Moon. So I'll let her take tell you about what really happens.
Thank you, Carolyn. So far, my outreach efforts have been geared to women and minority business owners who are located within Washtenaw County, specifically the Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti area, who are low to moderate income. Many of these business owners have exhibited the need for business development, technical assistance, or simple access to funding. In February 2020, we collaborated with Washtenaw Community College Entrepreneurship Center to host an online webinar feature called Financing for Opportunities for Women. This webinar, we discussed the obstacles women business owners face in becoming successful, taken seriously within the business industry itself, as well as an overview to MWF and our loan program. Through this webinar, we obtained 38 pipeline leads for possible business loans. Some of the type of businesses that we invest in are landscaping, food service, as well as childcare services. The planning for our second webinar with Washtenaw Community College is underway and is anticipated for June, July 2021. Additional information will be released once the details are finalized. To date, Michigan Women Forward has provided over $148,000 to Ann Arbor Ypsilanti business owners specifically. 65,000 of that resulted from the Resilience Fund grants awarded in 2020 to businesses affected by COVID, and over 83,000 has been invested by microloans. This resulted in 9 active microloans for us. We actually just closed on our 9th one last night. Microfinancing within our ecosystem is more than just the transactional loan transaction itself. We at MWF like to wrap our arms around our entrepreneurs to ensure success, both before and after our interaction, whether it be for technical assistance or the loan program itself. We do our due diligence and preparation for all loan applications come in. We work closely with our applicants on reviewing their financial projections at a granular level, provide market research, and determine their capacity to repay their debts, including MWF's loan. As I stated, we at MWF provide both pre and post-loan technical assistance with financial literacy, advertising and marketing development, cash flow projections, and business mentorship. At this time, I'd like to take a minute to showcase Forge Barbell LLC. Forge Barbell is a 100% women-owned business located in the city of Ann Arbor. Lauren has obtained a $10,000 loan with MWF that allowed her to purchase new equipment and build additional space to provide proper social distancing. In our February webinar with Washtenaw Community College, we showcased her and she was a featured speaker as she spoke to the obstacles she endured in becoming a successful business owner in a male-dominated industry. I also would like to acknowledge and thank our community partners for the support they have provided to Michigan Women Forward.
Hey, everybody. So there you have it. You got a flavor for our investor salon that attracted 65 guests, investors, advisors, and elected officials. The overwhelming response we got from them was we need to do more of these as we expand our platform or portfolio of investments. So we do have Jamie Hunter on the line as well. And I'm going to start by planting 2 questions and answering one of them. So the first question I want to answer is one we got a lot of after the investor salon, which is, do we need to give to the community foundation in order to participate in these investments? And the answer is a resolute no. So our metric for success isn't how much money is coming through the foundation. We have our endowment. We will be allocating it locally. Our metric for success is how much capital is flowing to these platforms, regardless of whether it flows through the community foundation. That said, we are allowing donor advisors at the community foundation to add their capital to the endowment allocations by our board. So there is an avenue within the foundation, but we are trying just as much to just connect advisors and investors directly to the folks you've heard from so that you can come to your own arrangements. The second question I'll pose that I don't have an answer to is this sports coat an anachronism? Is it out of date? In the period of the pandemic, I feel like I'm wearing a tuxedo right now. So I know there's no answer to that. Jamie and I have this debate all the time, and we just have no idea. So we erred on the side of wearing our pandemic tuxedos, but who knows, man, in the future, we'll just have to figure it out.
Neil, the real question is whether or not you're wearing pants with it. So.
Good point. So at this point, guys, we've got 20 minutes and I just want to open this up for conversation. And Jamie's been on the front line on a lot of this as well. So you have a bona fide technical expert here as well. And tell us what you're doubting. Tell us what you're wondering about. Let's take it in whatever direction you want to take it in.
I got a question. Outside of these 3 people and entities we heard from, is there any other organizations you're investing in?
So we are investing in a national platform. It's called the CCM Bond Fund. What their premise is, it's a different model where they're actually a fixed income national platform, but they do allocate any assets that we put through them to Washtenaw County, and then they report on where those assets are allocated. And so that's really for affordable housing. It's a little bit different than the other 3 because it's a national platform. The other answer to that question is there are many, many other platforms like this, but the heavy lift is figuring out, can they be successful in Washtenaw County, A? B, does the foundation have enough seed capital to attract them to Washtenaw County? Because, you know, let's face it, we're not a Chicago, we're not in New York, we operate at a different scale. And then C, do we think others will actually be just as excited as we are? So honestly, this goes to deal flow. Deal flow is going to be slow in the first few years, first 5 years, maybe the first decade. But hopefully we see, right, you know, the steepening curve over time. And we see it as our obligation to do the hard work and over time bring attention to what we start so that others can participate.
Neel, I wonder, can you talk rates of return on some of these investments and how they compare to, yeah, I would say more conventional investing that's happening?
Great question. Jamie, I'm going to give the broader strategic context, and then you can get into the nuts and bolts. So I will say is, as we're getting involved in impact investing, we are committed to the perpetuity of our permanent charitable funds. What does that mean? CPI plus 5%. That has to be the benchmark we maintain, assuming our 5% annual output from each charitable fund. And so, as you know, within a diversified portfolio, you have different levels of risk and return, and there's a lot of variables to take into account. But our board is constantly talking about how can we continue to make these investments without ever compromising the perpetuity of our permanent funds. And so that's the broader strategy over time. And then Jamie can talk about our initial investments and where we're headed.
Yes, Sam, I would just say, so the rates of return on these financial rates of return are kind of 1.5% to 2%, which may not sound all that exciting, but there is a significant social return to it as well. The allocation within our portfolio that this is coming out of is our fixed income allocation. So actually the rates of return have been fairly similar to what we're experiencing in, you know, just a traditional 40 Act fixed income fund.
And then I'll mention one of our goals going forward, now that our ceiling has been lifted from the current 2 million to 10 million of total, is we do need to find opportunities with higher return rates. That's going to happen one of two ways: through intermediaries like we're working with now, or in a couple of years, more direct investments by the foundation into local opportunities, real estate and affordable housing being a classic example of that. To that end, actually, with the board declaring the new goal, we will be adding a full-time impact investing officer to the foundation in the next half year to focus on that kind of deal development and deal flow.
And Neel, to highlight a comment that you made, but want to clarify, make sure I understand correctly. It sounds like you're permitting donor advisors to advise an allocation to your fund that the board directs. You're not permitting donor advisors to direct funds to specific projects or specific investments.
So Tony, good to see you, by the way. And the beard hasn't gotten too much longer since I last saw you. I'm disappointed by that, frankly. There's actually two answers to that. So there's two thresholds. At the $20,000 threshold, donor advisors can add to the pool. And like you described, Tony, that then gets intermingled with the other assets we're deploying, and there's no one single direction to that deployment. It may go to the existing ones, it may go to new ones. However, we do have some larger donor advised funds at the $100,000 threshold. Donor advisors can specify the investments they want to see those go to, and the investment returns track back to the donor advised fund. I'll also mention at the $20,000 level, every investee has agreed that because of the seed capital the foundation is given, the 20,000 minimum works, where our minimum was $250,000 typically. So the donor advised fund $20,000 deployments are add-ons to our existing investments. And it's just another example of how we can kind of plow the heavy snow and let others participate at a lower level of investment. And Tony, we do have a few donor advised funds who are already making those commitments. So we know demand seems pretty high because we're pretty early in this journey. So we're interested that, yeah, I think it's 4 or 5 have already stepped it up and said, we want to participate at either that first tier or that second tier.
Tony, I would also just add on to that, that all of the investee companies that we've invested in are very aware of the retail market and trying to actively cultivate it. So their minimum deal sizes have come down significantly. So if any of your contacts or clients are interested in a direct investment, that's now much more possible. So instead of investing 100 or 200K, they could do it in sizes of 20K or 25K. So that's actually like consciously part of IFF's strategy in Michigan is to cultivate that retail market.
Fernando.
Yeah, I got a question too, and I think maybe some input from Angela might help answer this question too, in addition to Jamie. But what would it take for Washtenaw County to actually come up with a regulated impact investment fund that would be easier for advisors to be able to direct their clients into because of all the all the due diligence that comes with that?
Angela, you've done a lot of thinking on that. That was some of our early conversations. So would love for you to jump in.
Yeah, sure. And hi, everyone. For those I don't know, I'm Angela Barbash with Revalue. We're an impact investment firm over in IFC, serving primarily retail investors, both accredited and non, with values alignment in public markets and in community investments. And I would say, great question, Fernando, one that we have asked a lot over the years. And there are two things that could happen. One is under current regulations, an impact investment fund or a community investment fund is really not profitable until it's in the somewhere between the $25 and $50 million range. In capital, and it depends on how lean the operation is, what they're trying to do. And we haven't quite gotten to that stage yet of interested capital, particularly institutional capital that would seed and anchor a fund like that. Then one dot B to that would be that there are a lot of community investment funds operating at lower amounts across Michigan and nationally, and those have multi-year commitments from subsidizing partners. So that's the other way that a community investment fund could operate. Number two strategy, though, that is emerging in the last year is a regulatory change. And so there is a rule on the books at the federal level that says that if a community investment fund wants to exist and have over $10 million, they have to proactively get an exemptive order from the SEC. And that's a pretty costly legal process. And so there is a group of advocates across the country that are being organized by folks like the National Coalition for Community Capital and Cutting Edge Capital out in California that are asking for rule changes for community investment funds to increase the limit to $50 million. So that removes a pretty hefty legal bill off of the table, which then changes the economics of the fund.
Fantastic, Angela. Thank you. And Jamie, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, Angela, I defer to Angela's expertise in that area.
I'll mention, so this is another example. The more we get into this, the more we realize how much the ecosystem needs to be built up locally, regionally, and nationally. So we've actually been in conversations with the MEDC directly posing this question on, can the MEDC put up some loan loss reserve for a region as opposed to a specific institution? Can they help seed the kind of fund, Fernando, that you just asked about? So we're starting to push on those fronts as well, because we would like to get to critical mass. This isn't something that we're going to be the mothership for. We're going to plow new territory, but we'd like to see eventually something independent of us that allows more capital to flow locally for social and financial returns.
Angela, just following up on that, I've wondered whether it might be possible just to get an informal group together, or maybe a formal group of, interested, affluent individuals, banks who have mandates to reinvest in the community. Is that something that could be possible, short of putting together like an actual, physical fund?
Yeah, that is also a great question, and gets to sort of a version of crowdsourced due diligence and deal sourcing. And there's a bit of experimentation happening on that front among advisors right now. So for those of you that are in the room that are representing RIAs or hybrid firms. There's a group of advisors across the country that are informally meeting and starting to do shared due diligence and deal sourcing right now. And so modeling that at a national level, but that certainly can happen at a local or statewide level. And the folks in the state that are convening on that front, kind of getting all of the people in the room. First and foremost is going to be the Council of Michigan Foundations, and Jen had to bow out earlier this meeting, but CMF is creating an impact investing hub. And there is, for those of you in the room that are advisors, you're going to be getting invitations from myself and John Rogers over at Greystone Consulting out of Morgan Stanley, along with Charlie Penner from the Small Business Development Center, to pull together the market facilitators, which are folks like platforms and attorneys, and the investment advising community, to see if we can do things like deal source sharing and pooling in an informal kind of way outside of a fund structure. And so I think that's a low-hanging fruit for sure.
So this is illustrating that it takes a village truly in this space. So it's going to be multi-year. We're going to be patient, but we're just going to push forward hard. And with our capital behind it, it just gives us one more tool to develop. Our view is every community foundation should be investing locally. Our mission is our geography, so it makes perfect sense to align our capital with where we live, where we work, and who we serve. So it's just a natural outgrowth of our mission, frankly. So we consider it a mandate, not a nice to have. What else, guys? I mean, what are your doubts? What are you excited about? You know, where are you thinking, oh man, there is no way, or oh geez, I can't wait, right? Tony.
I'm going to ask a hard question. What are the concerns that you have, or how have you considered them internally with respect to self-dealing for investors that are both investing personally and investing through the foundation charitable dollars?
Well, that's an interesting question. Jamie, have you thought that through at all?
So, Tony, if I understand correctly, you're talking about a situation in which we could have a donor that, you know, wants us to invest in their own organization.
Their own organization, or an organization in which they have a significant, substantial stake.
Yeah, I think that would be like a no-go right off the bat.
Right.
Personally, I mean, we'd have to have all kinds of conflict of interest rules around that. But Neel, I'm spitballing here, but if it's a mission that has enormous social impact, I don't think we would rule it out. We would, just because there is a potential conflict. I'm thinking of one situation where we have a committee member who is doing great stuff with his organization. It's possible that one of our investee organizations could was interested in talking to him and having a conversation before we actually invested in it. And certainly our investment would do nothing to, put a halt or put brakes on that conversation. So I don't want to ever say no, like a categorical no. It would depend on the specifics, but there would have to be a ton of controls around the conflict and probably exclude that original donor from any decision making in the actual investment.
Yeah, and actually, Tony, I'd start with that question in my head, not from financial regulations and restrictions, but rather treasury regs around donor advised funds. There's a pretty clear, bright line that donor advised deployments cannot in any way result in personal benefit for the advisor to an asset that's technically owned by the community foundation. We draw that hard line all the time with donor advisors, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable if, for example, they want to give to an organization where a family member is the executive director, which is actually prohibited. I think we would bring that same lens to the investment question. If they had any kind of fiduciary, pecuniary, any other relationship to that institution, we would have to say no based on the treasury regs that apply to DAFs. But I'm with Jamie. This is actually where we start using counsel in answering these questions, right? We've done this for decades on the charitable side of our shop. This is a whole new set of questions we're starting to encounter on the impact investing side. And then the other thing, to Angela's point, is where are we sharing that so that the diligence we pay for or the counsel that we get can be shared out with everybody else? So we've saved everyone else on expense and time as well. So we are going to be careful in not jumping to conclusions, but I will tell you at our shop, we draw a really hard line on conflicts of interest, both perceived and actual. And so I don't have any plans on relaxing that line on the impact investing side.
Oh, that's
It's critical for trust and transparency.
Yeah, like you can see in certain circumstances, there's some gray, but yeah, that's helpful to hear your take on that.
Sure. We have 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna tell you where this is all headed. So we are hiring an impact investing officer. We have lifted our ceiling to $10 million, and we are trying to mobilize other investors to join us, not through the foundation, but alongside the foundation as a co-investor. So what you're going to see in the next few years is an elevated level of deal sourcing by us. So that's one piece. Ecosystem building, and Angela actually framed that beautifully in terms of how can we make our community more ready for capital to flow to places that generate those dual returns. And then finally, coalition building. So, the county thinks differently in how they invest their capital than, let's say, institutional investors than do individual investors. A huge piece of feedback we got from the salon is we have to bifurcate, trifurcate, quadrifurcate, whatever the words are beyond there, and actually start speaking to each investing audience differently rather than do the big umbrella approach that we did with our first investor salon. So that's another thing you're going to see is we're going to start targeting particular kinds of investors and engaging with them in different ways. And again, this is all on the learning curve. Along the way, we're going to screw it up. We're going to make mistakes. We'll learn from them, course correct. And the one thing you can rest assured is we will not put our permanent charitable funds at risk. There is no way that's going to happen. We'd just as soon step away from the effort than do that, because at our heart, we're an endowment institution. And with that, Shelley, I can tap dance a little bit more if you want me to. It's a fun and friendly crowd. Or you want me to close it out because I know we're at time?
It is a friendly crowd, and I think especially the accountants and financial planners let Jamie off the hook. I had him sweating that he was going to get some heavy hitting questions. So feel free though to hang out and give those solo. We'll hang out a little bit here and contact us individually and welcome your thoughts too and how we can continue to share this with other audiences and reach other people, because it is going to take a village, as was noted earlier. So really appreciate your time today and hope you have a great summer. Thank you.